subtly. Okay. And Nikki's there. Hello, Nikki. And Michelle's coming on.
Hiya.
So, hello there. So let's start with you. We're going to run for 60 minutes and then zip for me, that is. So firstly, how are the sessions going?
Right.
Are they delivering what you want them to deliver? Because it's a partnership issue here.
They're delivering pain.
Okay. Let me.
I say that light-heartedly. No, they're very good.
Right. In terms of pain, that's really interesting, actually. Is it pain as in no pain, no gain, or is it pain with a purpose?
Pain with a purpose. Absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean? I always say to people, if I said to you, if we were sitting next to you and I lit a fire, I had a little Bunsen burner or something, and I said, put your hand in the fire. You'd say, why? Yeah, obviously you would. However, if outside a car crashed and there was a car on fire and there's a child in the car, you'd rush out and very happily sustain all sorts of pain because you know why you're doing it. So a really fundamental thing. I know Paul didn't say this for this reason. It's really important to me and Nikki and Lee in Hong Kong that you understand why we're asking you to do it. So sometimes we give you too much rationale, and I appreciate lots of people just like to be told, just do this, just tell me what to do. I'm saying, well, yes, we can do that, but I really want you to understand why we want to do it. And then you're more likely to go a bit further, well, you will go further over a longer period. So if it's pain with a purpose, if at any point it becomes, you think, why are we doing this? Ask the question. Because, you know, I don't intend asking, I'm Nikki is the same. We're not going to ask you to do anything which one won't benefit you, and two, doesn't have an express reason for doing it. Yeah. And it's to get us the best team possible, the most blended team and gelled team. Okay. What are you enjoying? What are you enjoying most about the sessions?
It's good that we're all out together. Nikki's coaching all sorts of different things and we're developing the technique, but how she's delivering it is really good because, like you say, she's explaining it, so we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Yeah. When she's teaching us, so it's just good because you're learning more. It can only make us better paddlers.
Good, and that's all credit to Nikki for doing that. That's brilliant. Okay.
There's a real positivity on the boat as well. I think there's a really good vibe and a good energy on the boat.
You know, we mentioned a few weeks ago, some teams talk about the psychological bit. The team psychology starts from minute one. Yeah, because we said this, and I said that I'll say this time and time again. Yes, it's nice wearing a shirt with the Union flag on it or some variation representing GB, but first and foremost, you're there for the boys and the girls in the boat. Because when it comes to it, the difference between winning and losing will be your relationship with the boys and the girls in the boat. And I say that because, might have mentioned it before, the Senior A squad in 2019, I was paddling Senior B, so I wasn't involved in 2019 with Senior A. They had a good team, they had a good recent history, but the fabric of the team wasn't there. So when things started going wrong, and they had a couple of setbacks, like all teams do, I think in the 2K, they went inside a buoy or something, or stuff that is, yeah, it's a time penalty, but it's just, these things happen. You know, a helm makes a mistake in the heat of the moment, and they take a wrong course. Yeah, and it's either collide with somebody or go outside a buoy. That sort of situation, the typical situation. And because the fabric of the team wasn't there, they weren't really able to respond or rebound from that. So they went into recriminations about whether, you know, you should be on the boat and whether this and that. And they've got this really this term which I've sort of banned. They call them coat hangers. Bloody outrageous. And it's basically a coat hanger, according to the old style Senior A, is somebody who's there in the boat who doesn't deserve to be. So it's essentially somebody. I mean, I said to just listen. We just that term. Just do not use that term around me at all. Because if somebody doesn't deserve to be in the boat, they're not in the boat. That's it. It's so important that, you know, if I'm sitting, well, I probably won't because I'm too old. I'm sitting in the boat next to Tom or Debbie or Chrissy or whoever. You know, each and every one of you deserves to be there because you deserve to be there. And if you don't deserve to be there, you won't be there. And that's built up, that relationship is built up not just in the sessions, it's in the returns, it's in everything we do. Yeah. And that's, you know that instinctively. So that's where we're going with that. But it's not a thing to make people concerned about. It's to actually to empower somebody. Say, look, this is something that is worth doing. It's worth doing a bit of sacrifice, doing a bit of this, working hard in sessions, maybe missing some things that you would prefer to do normally. That's what it's about. Yeah. Anyway. So what would you improve about the sessions?
We need
Debbie,
to,
Debbie, what would you improve? There's a smile there. What would you improve?
What would I improve? I think the sessions we've been doing have been really effective, and I feel that we've all made progress for sure. I think one of the main things is just trying to get as many people on the boat as possible at one time. And I know lots of things are difficult for lots of people, but that is, I think, one of the things that sometimes we struggle a bit with.
Okay.
But I like the way this sessions are delivered. We get on the boat, we warm up, and we get on with it. And it's, you know, it's no messing around. So I feel they're quite efficient. Oh,
good. Okay. I asked Nikki to consider introducing something I always like to sign off with. I don't know if you did it. It consists of a couple of press ups and a couple of burpees.
Yeah. I can't believe she's not sent you the video.
Right. Oh, right. Well, I only saw one burpee though, not the 50,000 I asked for. But anyway, so why do you think? I mean, you don't have to do this, but why do you think? I think it's a good idea for teams to do that. So you go out on the water, you work hard, play hard, and then you come off the water and do something else. Why? What do you think the theory or the rationale might be in my crazy mind about that?
the fun.
More pain than Nikki does.
Okay, fine. Yeah, any other thoughts?
Keep you on your toes.
Oh no,
Bit of a switch. How can I put it? You're still not finished, and you've still got a little bit more to give.
That's it. It's not about. I spent some years in the parachute regiment. I know about beasting. This is not about beasting, right? It's about, you've always got another. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the rational, my thinking on it is you've always got another 500.
Mm.
Now you may physically not, if you've actually given everything you've got, but you've always got more. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I tend to do that just because it's a team thing, isn't it? We've always got more we can give. And I mean, on the day of the championship, we won't be doing press ups, burpees at a world championship. That'll be consigned to the waste bin by then. But it's just the idea that, you know, whatever you can give, you can always give some more. That's all. Now, it may be popular, it may not be popular. I tend to do it at my cruise. You don't have to do it, but it's something like that. Sort of. There's always one more 500, if you know what I mean. Anyway, right, Nikki. Any thoughts so far?
Same as Debbie, really. Just get the people on the boat, and I'm thinking about when we should start introducing another session.
Right. Okay. Well,
but I mean, I have to say the sessions are, from my point, I feel they're going good. The team's really, the crew as such is really gelling. And very eager to learn, and very, you know, again, just want to give, which is great.
Yeah. Okay. Did you get a chance, any of you, to look at the videos?
The 3 drills.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, the first one, the TLC drills is a very basic drill that I tend to aim at more beginner sort of level, but the rationale is pretty good there. But the reason I was talking about it is because this whole idea of catch, and let's just spend a little bit of time talking about catch. I mean, how important is the catch, would you say? Not very important. Doesn't matter if you miss a few, because you can always do another one.
It's very important.
Well, just give us out of 10. What do we think?
10.
Anybody think less than 10? absolutely fundamentally important to everything you do. But why? Oh yeah, fine, okay. So we agree with that. Why? So why is the catch so important? I mean, it's all important, but why is the catch fundamentally important?
That's the point. You're leveraging you're maximizing your leverage. If you fall short on your catch, you're never gonna have the opportunity to exert power across that distance. So
Right.
you've got to aim to catch as long as you can, as effectively as you can. That's the starting point, really. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's there on back, you're missing out on an opportunity to create power.
Okay. Any other advance on that? Yes to all of that.
First part of the stroke.
Say it again.
It's the first part. It's the first part of the stroke. So if you get the catch wrong, everything else is going to go wrong.
Okay.
Could
And
go.
Paul.
Using one of yours, Tim. What you catch, you keep.
Right. This, I mean, you'll hear it in a different firm. This whole idea of what you catch, you keep. Now, bearing in mind you're applying. Are you applying weight? Are you getting your weight over the paddle, or are you applying force to the paddle, or something else? What's your thought?
Applying force.
Right. So what's the difference between force and weight?
Does one have movement with it? One's something.
Yeah.
My physics is rusty.
Yeah, magnitude and direction. So the point is, it's not just sticking the paddle in the water and hoping for this. And if it's I think I said this probably before, if you're doing 500 meters, say you do a 500 meters in 2 minutes, so you probably got, with a faster start, about 130 strokes. So people say you've only got one opportunity to make a first impression, but in the 500 meters, you've got maybe 130 opportunities to make it count. So really, only 130 in a world championship. You cannot afford to miss any part of one stroke. It does happen. I know it does happen. You do catch crabs, but once it's gone, you can't get it back. Now, the problem is, and one of the most common things you'll see is people coming in too late. There's a few people in all crews doing this. They're doing a fairly strong catch. It looks fairly strong, but they're missing that front portion to it. Yeah, and I think some of the videos sort of suggested that maybe we had the right length stroke, but instead of it being there, it was there, if you know what I mean. So pushing the whole thing forward. And we talked about that idea of, if you look at those videos and the front end drill, the front end pause drill. What do you think the most? If you've seen that, what do you think? This is one where you're holding. That's the water line. You're just momentarily, patience on the catch, holding the setup just an inch or 2 inches above the water. It's certainly not up here somewhere. Some people do it up here, down by the water. So you've done your twist, you've done your lean in that sort of succession, as opposed to a mishmash, and you just pause there. What happens immediately after that?
Paddle goes in.
Okay, fine. But how? Does it go in like that?
No,
Like that?
fall onto the blade.
Does it sort of skip across the surface? So it carries on in, right, it carries on in that direction. So what? Yeah, fine, why? And that's something that people often miss. They'll hold it, initiate the stroke, and then just sort of drop the head and rotate. Instead of going that way and then back, they sort of drop down. And what they basically do is kill the catch straight away. So this little session here, this little chat I'm going to do now is not so much about catch, it's about how you kill the catch. So it's a reverse way of looking at it. And so identifying things to avoid. So ideally, however fast we're paddling, then we're making that catch. It's going in positive. We're gripping water, hooking water, catching water, whatever terminology you use, moving the boat past the paddle, and then all the way through the power phase, the paddle is under load. And whatever power you're bringing to the boat, be it this or whatever it is, as Paul quite rightly says, what you catch, what you load on the front, you keep all the way through the power phase. But because it's a rotational stroke, then how you're delivering power is slightly different. But certainly you're pushing more down at the front, but then as it translates through, you're pulling with the core, driving with the legs. So using the lats all the way through, but using it in a slightly different way, because you're not pushing down. You're pushing down at the front assertively, and then pulling through with the bigger muscle groups. Okay, so that's the ideal. So we talked about the paddle tracks through. Let me get my simulated paddle again, also known as a piece of pipe. So here I am in my boat, and what I'm talking about, losing the catch straight away. If we don't post it before we drive it, it sort of drops and it either tracks neutral or negative from the catch point, and then it's gone. And if we allow too much slippage, we actually might have a little bit of grip on the water at the front, and then by the time it's going negative, we're actually just sliding or slipping through the water. More in outrigger terms, people talk about slippage, and that's what it is. So how can you stop the blade slipping?
You mean inverting backwards?
Yeah, well, yeah, or losing the grip. If I say slip, I mean losing the grip on the water. So we're gripping there, we're gripping all the way through this power point, if you like, where it's 90 degrees. We're going to lose it a bit at the end. There's still some power to be had, but of course, by the time it's getting level with the hip, then we're extracting anyway. So there is a negative, slight, if you call this a positive impulse, if you like, there is a slight negative impulse at the back because you're not stopping and lifting it straight out. That's going to happen. It's a couple of kilos. In bad examples, you can see somebody putting 15 kilos on the front and ripping out the back. You've seen people paddle like that. They're actually taking, if you work with a data paddle, they can be taking 10 or 15 kilos of power off the back. So the net result is zero. You see what I mean? So they're working hard, really working hard, but they're loading the front, ripping out the back, and the net result of that particular paddler is maybe 1 or 2 kilos of pressure, but nothing more than that. So there's a limit to where we're going. So we know how we should be paddling. How do we stop the paddle from tracking negative too early and it's slipping through the water? And what I mean by that is when you're slipping through the water, you know, as the boat goes faster, is it harder or easier to paddle to grip the water, do you think?
I think it's harder when it's faster.
Yeah, it's going to be, isn't it? I mean, basically, and the further you are down the line,
yeah, the harder it is.
The front three, if they're working together, the front three seats probably can get it because they may have a rising wave anyway. But further down, then it becomes increasingly difficult. That's why very often people put some of their technically better paddlers, rather than being the cheap seats, they put, people call, I think you call them rockets or something or whatever, or they give them various names. But basically, it's recognition that you have to be in a proper race crew, a fast race crew. You need to be technically proficient to work the water, because if somebody's a bit messy in front of you in terms of a stroke, you may end up dealing with their cavitated water as well. So very often, the faster the boat, the harder it is to keep that impulse going, keep that grip on the water. Right. So how do you avoid that? So we've seen what the problem is, and we've all seen this, and all crews experience it. Yeah, sometimes when people are, well, no, you tell me. You tell me.
I think for me, there's an element of timing, particularly with the top arm drive. If you don't coordinate driving with your leg and driving down with your top arm, I think if you get it wrong, that's when you can begin to invert and roll over the top. And I think the other thing as well is initiating the movement from the core rather than from the arms, because you haven't got that opportunity to use that larger muscle mass to kind of de-rotate.
Top hand drive is important, yeah, but I think some crews over rely upon it. I mean, you're doing this, if you like, even with a soft bounce, it's like the volleyball spike touchdown sort of situation, and that's strong to a point, but I'm effectively pushing down in that direction, and the boat wants to be going in that direction. So that's locating in the water, gripping, and then I'm coming straight in. So that timing issue, I call it pushing down with the top hand, pulling with the core, the forcible derotation, and driving with the leg. So you've got a push with the leg and a pull with the core and another push with the top hand. So what sort of, how synchronized does that need to be? Is there, I mean, some crews paddle with a slight delay, so like a double tap sort of thing, or should it be together, or should it be the leg drive first, or what do we think? What the synchronicity of those three different movements. So push with the top hand, pull with the core, or derotate, drive with the leg. Should they be, what's the timing between those three things? Or anything else you can think of? You may use different terminology.
When you top rotating. Oh. Go ahead, Jen.
I'd say you want to top arm drive first, and then I don't know, maybe leg and derotate around about the same time. But you need to get the blade in the water before you start pushing with your leg.
Which? Because you said two different things there.
So top arm drive before you start pushing with your leg.
Okay, so that's the double tap. So you've got top. So you're pushing down with the top hand.
Yeah.
What sort of force?
Anybody? No clue.
Okay, but you're talking in terms of a push and then a pull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
any advance on that? This is my poker face.
Because I was going to say something similar. I think you need to, the paddle goes in with the foot with positive before your body and your legs drive back. Now it's only a very fractional delay though. It's not all at the same time.
Right, so it's not at the same time. Okay, so you're pushing down and then back, like it's like an L-shaped stroke, yeah?
Yeah.
Catherine, you agree?
Yeah, I would. I need a good catch before then you pull back. Yeah. Oh, well, you don't pull back, but you kick the boat to the paddle.
Oh, no doubt. You certainly need a good catch. Absolutely, no doubt about that. But I'm just interested in your understanding of how much you're driving the paddle into the water before you start pulling back. So on your top hand drive, if you've got that double tap sort of setup, so it's like a bang bang, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think you place the paddle first, so you're not driving. It depends what you're talking about driving your top arm. Is that with power? Because your first one is you're trying to place the blade first, which is a quick jab rather than power.
Yeah, it's quick.
So you place the blade in the water, it's fully buried, then you start to drive. So you are driving, for me, you're driving pretty much everything in unison. The top arm, the pull back and the sit up. Trying to work out where, it depends on sometimes where your legs are in terms of your size of your body as well.
Okay.
Leg drive.
So you're talking about getting the paddle into the water assertively, maybe not aggressively. We're talking about red line rather than red mist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not messing about. We're getting the blinking thing in the water, definitely. And then we're locking it on the front end, then we're loading it, are we?
Yeah.
Does that sound more sensible? Or you? So I've sensed, Paul, you're maybe more thinking in terms of getting the blade in the water assertively together, and then once it's fully buried, then the power comes on, rather than drive down, drive back. You're talking about lock it, load it all together. Yeah,
but that's what I was trying to say too.
Yeah.
Oh, so Chrissy, you've jumped to a different camp. That's good.
No, because that's what I was. I think they're the same. I just think they're the same things.
Well, then this is why I'm making the point. They're not quite the same thing. And way back when this first started, because lots of people came to dragon boating from kayaking, they introduced this term, spear the fish. Right? And if you say spear the fish, what does that mean? What do you do? Do you actually sort of just drop it in? You ram it in, don't you? And with a kayak blade, any of you who are surf ski paddlers or kayak paddlers, the shape of the blade is different. It's a wing-shaped paddle. And catch in kayaking is first touch. You paddle it slightly differently as well, but you get drive because it's a wing shape, high pressure, low pressure, blah, blah, blah. You get drive from first touch. With a dragon boat paddle, you've got to get the blade fully buried. So there's a design of the blade. I know the new paddles have got a very slight ridge on them, but pretty much is a flat piece of carbon. So you've got to get the blinking thing in the water and then load it. So I think a common misunderstanding is that people think they have to ram it in the water aggressively, down and then back. But if you're pushing in that direction, just think about the physics of it. If I just had a paddle and I rammed it in the water as fast as possible, what would actually happen if I just managed to isolate that component of what I'm doing? Just this top hand drive.
Yeah.
Where's the boat going to go?
Back. The opposite.
Well, it's not going to go forwards, is it?
No.
And so my only take on this is, if it doesn't drive the boat, it's like, why don't you stand up and wave at the crowd? Well, we don't do that because it doesn't drive the boat, do you? It's a totally irrelevant activity. That's a bad example. So the point I'm saying is, if pushing down, ramming it down as hard as possible, doesn't drive the boat, why are you doing it? Now, what you do need to do, as Paul quite rightly says, is get the blade in the water assertively, get it snappy in the water, definitely in the right angle, and then load it at the same time. Most definitely. It's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive. It's not about getting it in whatever and hoping for the best. It's being very purposeful and deliberate in what you're doing. Nikki.
Yes.
Do you agree, or would you use different terminology, or is it complete gobbledygook? Am I talking complete nonsense?
No, I mean, I've come across a lot of paddlers that obviously sit and they do, as I say, thump the blade in the water and it splashes everywhere. And then if you tell them to be kind of quick and gentle about it, then they miss the catch completely. Right. So most people seem to understand the term passive aggression on the catch. It's quick and clean.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not sitting there and we're not going to, you know, be like a fairy on the catch kind of thing, because that's what I've seen too. It's what I've seen people do, is like I say, it's either they catch like a fairy or they just splash the damn thing in. And it's just, for me, I just find if I tell people be passive with a little bit of aggression on the blade, be quick, be clean, lock it in, and then drive. They seem to understand that better.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm working with so many different nationalities here, and I've got quite a few on the team. So you're always looking for another way to explain it to people as well. So, you know, I'm always looking for words and ways to explain to people. But like I say, that seems to be the one that they seem to understand the best. Yeah.
I mean, another term you might come across is patience on the catch. Passive aggressive. Okay, yeah, if that works, it works. But the whole point is, we're talking about, when we talk about aggression, we're talking about, if you're talking about a martial arts weapon, precision point aggression rather than blunt instrument. So we're not looking to smash it in the water anyhow and hope for the best. It's purposeful, precision, assertive rather than aggressive. But we've got to get it in. We can't mess about.
Yeah, yeah.
So one way where we can kill the catch is to be imprecise, or ram it in the water first and then ram it back. So it's a subtle difference, but we're talking about marginal gains here. We're talking about subtle differences that might give us a little bit more propulsion in unison with the boat. So that's why we're talking at this level. Okay, next, something Heidi May mentioned. She talked about timing. And we're talking about ways we can lose the catch and therefore recognize them and avoid them. So timing, we might have touched upon this earlier, but what's the difference between timing and phasing? Is there a difference, or is it just a play on words?
I think it's more as well to do with synchronicity.
Yeah, okay. Phasing, another word for it. Yes, yeah. So what do you mean by that? Yes, absolutely.
Everybody together. So everybody's hitting the catch at the same time, and everybody's driving at the same time, and then everybody's coming out at the same time as well. Okay. So if you look at a smooth boat, everybody is doing everything at the same time, and it looks synchronized.
Efficient.
Yeah.
Efficient. Yeah. So for example, here's Catherine here, and here's me one seat behind Catherine, and we're paddling together. We're in time, we're in phase.
Mm-hmm.
we're in time, we're out of phase. Yeah, so you can, if Catherine's paddling a nice steady stroke and I'm going low on the back and I'm racing to catch up, you can be in time and out of phase. Yeah, you can, and I'm sure you've seen this. Why is, so it doesn't look so nice, okay, but does it matter? Having a boat in phase and in time. So we know the timing is important, absolutely, in terms of the PowerPoint. But that sort of fibrillation, if you like, in the boat, why is that?
Yeah, it creates unnecessary, like a waste of energy. The boat judders, and it's just inefficient.
And if you get absolutely, if you get that sort of juddering fibrillation, is not a bad word actually. You set up different motions in the boat. Why do we care about that? We do.
Slows the boat. Slows the boat down if we don't all hit at the same time and drive at the same time.
Yeah,
we'll go bouncing along.
And I think it, it often happens. I know as a, I spend a lot of time at the front. If the back are pushing the front, and again you get that kind of, it's not synchronized and it's juddering.
I think more so as well when we're closer together. Like if you're behind somebody, I know at the moment we're more spaced out, but when you're close again and you've got somebody that's slightly slower than you on a, like the returning, if you're quite snappy and the person in front of you doesn't snap forward, you just constantly feel that they're getting in the way, and that can kind of also put you off mentally as well. If you're
absolutely, and
yeah.
This is why we talk a lot about when we get back into more people in the boat. But when we talk about blending and sort of who you're sitting next to, who's sitting in front of you, this, that, and the other. Yeah, you've got to be comfortable in your space. And I talk about things like your workspace. So whoever you're talking about, your athlete, your paddler, your workspace is catch point. And if you're, your extraction point, obviously at the hip or whatever it's going to be, driving, pushing off the back, whatever it's going to be, whatever length of the stroke is, that's your workspace. So as an athlete, your job, come the day of the race, is to concentrate on your workspace, not worry about the fact that Heidi May is bashing you in the air with her left arm or whatever it's going to be. So that's the sort of stuff we work out in training. So that's it. That's solely your job. So the last couple of years I spent paddling with Senior B, interesting experience, but I won't bore you with that. They'd say to me, well, what do you think? I'll tell you what I think if you're interested, but I'm actually here. I'm interested in optimizing my workspace. That's it. Obviously, you're still part of the team. And if there's stuff that you can sort out in terms of phasing and that sort of friendly critiquing of your mates around you, that all helps. Because if you get somebody who's out of phase significantly, then one, you won't be able to get a proper catch. Two, you try and catch up. You're spending some of your effort and energy trying to stay in time with them rather than paddling the boat.
No.
But
yeah, and I think as well, certainly under race conditions, the only thing you want to be thinking about is the thing that you have control over, which is your own stroke.
Yeah.
So if the boat's not synchronized and you're aware of anything else, and that's a distraction from what you should actually be doing, which is optimizing your own stroke performance.
Yeah, absolutely. But what does it do in terms of, just getting back to the marginal gain side of things? Yeah, we talked last week about this idea. I mean, it's not an idea; it actually does work, and it's a minute amount of drive. But if you can get people working together, moving forwards together, then that action does actually move the boat. It's not going to be 5 kph. It could be a quarter of a kph. It doesn't matter. But if it's something we can work on to work together, that gives us some propulsion, some forward motion, some forward drive, it's got something we want to work on. And if you've got this sort of more, it's the same as, I mean, the thing you've experienced that somebody mentioned, I think it's Heidi May, I can't remember, when you've got somebody who's pushing, you've got a stroke group, and then you've got that pushing, and you can feel it in the boat, isn't it? It's like it's a stuttering, apart from taking your mind off to what you're supposed to be doing there, as in paddle as hard as possible, apart from being off-putting, also, when you're at the back of the boat, you can feel it's like a push. So the whole thing is not moving. And the obverse of that is, if you see some of the certainly German, Ukrainian boats who really spend a lot of time upon a big, slow stroke rate, and you can see the whole thing is moving forward. I remember watching the GB ladies team, senior B team in Brandenburg a few years ago. They were both doing small boats, both doing 78 strokes a minute. And the German boat and the Ukrainian boat, who got gold and silver, by the way, 78 strokes a minute, same sort of stroke rate, and they were just moving. The whole thing was moving forward positively. The GB team was also doing 78 strokes a minute, coincidentally, and yet it was just dying. And you could see it was the same stroke rate, but they just didn't have the wave pattern going through the boat. And what you're looking for is a big wave at the front. And if you can get the wave length is the length of the boat, then that's getting near to the optimum boat speed of the boat, but more about that later on. So efficiency as well. Okay. So another way to kill the catch, out of timing, out of phasing, and not understanding or working out the blending between you and the people around you. But the most important way, or the most important, the most significant way of killing the catch is what you do with your wrist. Now, this action, it's good. This action, this extension of the wrist, it's good and it's bad. Just to give you a clue. So where is it bad? This action. And where is it good? So you've got a top hand and a bottom hand. One hand is desirable, one hand is undesirable.
Your top hand, you want to keep your wrist pretty much locked.
Right, so what way? So I can be locked neutral.
I keep it fairly neutral.
I can be locked flexed, and I can be locked extended.
No, I'd say fairly neutral.
Okay, so
yeah. And then your bottom hand, you can break at the wrist and the elbow when you're taking your paddle out of the water, I would say.
yeah, I think we might have mentioned this before. Bottom hand, if you grip too tight, two things happen. First thing, bicep tenses and you lose the catch. The second thing is the tendency for the wrist to sort of extend a little bit under tension. So you see this quite often with people paddling really hard, gripping the paddle too tight, hanging on too tight, foreshortened there, and then extended there. And the paddle actually angles out the way. So it's bad on the bottom hand. So nice and loose, sufficient, then gripping when it's in the water. But this top hand, best way to kill the catch is to roll the wrist. And you see this so often. And if you want to make your blade slip through the water when you paddle, make the catch and roll. And in that translation backwards, people realize it's got to end up there, but they roll too soon. And all you do by rolling the wrist, then you lose the catch on the water. So you're not gripping the water anymore. And if you often see it, people just pass this power point, just past the 90 degrees, and they roll straight away because they're thinking about extracting too early. So you're talking about neutral or positive, and I'd like you to try this on your next session, see if it makes a difference. So when, obviously it's got to end up here, you've got to roll it at the end to get the thing out of the water, but how soon do you roll the wrist?
Not until the exit.
Yeah, way after the power phase, I would thought.
Yeah, when the paddle's kind of mid-thigh.
I wouldn't even, I would concentrate. I mean, some people saying to me, I want to concentrate on extracting at the same time. Well, what's the point? I mean, the point is you've got to make sure you've got a full length stroke. You're in time, you're in phase. And if my arm is that length and say Abby's arm is that length, well, yes, moments I'm going to come out an inch before you are. I mean, it's insignificant. So it's not worth thinking about that. Think about timing on the front end. And because people are thinking too early about extracting the paddle, that tends to cause them to roll the wrist too early. So what you need to be concentrating on is keeping that angle, bottom hand in front of the top hand, and the arm will naturally be in the same position. If you keep the paddle, if you concentrate on keeping pressure on the blade, force on the blade all the way through, then that will stay. I paddle these days, I paddle pretty much either wrist cocked or neutral, but certainly not negative. Or
Yeah.
so I'll just concentrate and I'll try this on your next session, just keep it cocked, as in extended, for as long as possible. And there'll come a point where when you get, as Heidi May says, mid-thigh, it's going to naturally go to there anyway. But by that stage, you're finishing the stroke. But as we get onto it, in a couple of sessions, we'll start talking about working the back. In fact, we'll probably start this next week, working the back of the stroke. But just for the time being, try and keep it cocked and just try that. See how you get on with that, because that will create that angle for you. Yeah, just drop it, load it, and then when you get past the hip, then it's going to naturally come to neutral and then negative. Just see if it makes a difference, but don't grip so tight that you're sort of putting too much emphasis on there. Just keep it in that position, because what people often do is they'll do a nice rotation, and I think I mentioned this before, rather than leaning with the body, they sort of do a lazy lean and just drop the hand. So you end up creating the angle without actually using the body. So you do a rotation and then paddle from there, rather than a rotation and a lean forwards. Yeah. Just last point before we open up to questions. I don't want to go on to too much theory today. We talk about rotation and reach, rotation and lean, yeah, in that order. Do we all agree it's that order? So you rotate. So the twist lean catch, if you like. The twist is the rotation, then the lean is the reach, then there's a catch. Yeah, we all agree with that pretty much. When you lean forward, where are you leaning? We sort of touched upon this last week, but we didn't cover the whole. We talked about this sort of hinging action. So this is the top of my body. In fact, it's that way, isn't it? That's the bottom of my body. So I'm hinging at the waist, but it's not quite a square hinge, is it? I'm actually hinging like that, yeah? Because I'm reaching over that way. I'm not just going down, nodding dog.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've got one articulation point. I'm hinging at the waist. Am I hinging or rotating anywhere else?
Rotating around the spine.
Right. So I've got this bit here, the bottom bit. Is there any other sort of, in terms of this reach movement, is there anywhere else where I'm rotating or concentrating on?
Rotation starts from your hips.
Yes, certainly. So hip flex. So I've got so here's what I'm talking about. So when I'm paddling, I'm rotating at the hip, or I'm sort of hinging at the hip. Yeah. Is there anything else I need to be doing? So from there, and I'll drop it in. Yeah.
I'd say shoulder as well.
Shoulder, right. So what happens to the shoulder? So I've got 2 points of rotation. I've got my hip and my shoulder. So what's happening at my shoulder?
Going forward.
Going forward.
Right. So I'm not just rotating and dropping in, am I? I'm actually laying it down to a certain extent. So my arm actually is traveling that sort of thing. Yeah. It's not just dropping it in. So another thing to have a look at is if you're not rotating it, there's a little bit of rotation at the shoulder. If you're not rotating at the shoulder, then the tendency is to drop straight in. And the way to avoid it, which I can't remember who mentioned it, first point, I think it might have been Chrissy, about keeping your head up and your back straight.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep your head up and your back straight, and I talk about future water. So if I'm paddling towards you, if I keep my nose up, if I keep my eyes up, I can be looking down, and I think I'm looking up, so my head's down. If I put my nose on the target, then by doing that, you see what I mean? I'm actually rotating at the shoulder as well, just getting a little bit more reach out of it. So 2 things I'm going to ask Nikki to look at, fine-tuning this week. The second one is rotating at the shoulder. It's not a massive rotation. It's not up here. It's just keeping that arm a little bit further up, a bit of rotation there to get a little bit more reach out of it. And what was the first one we talked about?
You're talking about rotation?
Yes. I mentioned 2 things to...
Hip. That's it, the hip joint?
Hip and shoulder.
I'll give you a clue. Wrist.
Hand.
I just want to see if you're paying attention.
Rotation on the wrist.
Well, so 2 things to have a think about and see how it works for you. The first is to keep the wrist certainly neutral. but preferably a little bit cocked as well, a little bit extended, just on the catch, and see how that works for you. Don't be, you know, just keep it, just a bit of focus on that rather than allowing yourself to rotate or to go negative or slip straight away. And the second one is just think about what's happening in your shoulder. Like I say, it's not a massive movement, but you probably end up from, instead of going to there, you're probably going to there. Yeah, but you're not overextending. You're only going as far as your limit of strength and dexterity. You're not sort of laying down on the gun, or I'm not suggesting that. Just trying to find a little bit more reach out of your stroke just by rotating a little bit there rather than just accepting where it's going. And it starts with keeping your head up and your back straight, future water looking where you're going. Okay. Enough blah for me. And I'm going to finish in 9 minutes, definitely. So, what do you think? Does any of that make sense? I hate that term, but does it make sense?
Yeah, I think we had this morning a couple of guys that Nicky had pulled out with the Barracudas, and they were doing exactly what you said about rolling over, and it was their catch was their stroke was going negative very early, and they were doing exactly what you were saying, and they were rolling their wrists. So when you see an example, and then you think, oh yeah, that's why. I think it's good to see what happens when you do little things like that and why people are short and stuff. So
the problem, I mean, it's very rarely lack of effort. What it is mostly is whatever effort and power and force you're bringing to the boat, it's about optimizing that. Yeah. So if you say to somebody who's very maybe precious about the way they paddle, we're not saying you're a crap paddler. What we're saying is you've got a huge amount of power there, whatever power you're bringing to the boat. We're trying to make that power more effective. Yeah. Does that sound like something that might be interested in? Depending on how you put it across, they normally say, actually, yes. Yeah, would you like to get more drive out of your stroke? Yeah, that sounds good. We'll try this. Just try this. See how it works. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Right. But yeah, it's probably one of the most common, what I would call crime against paddling. Yeah. Another one is insufficient. Yeah. What crimes below the gunwale? What insufficient leg drive, or just kicking off the front of the stroke. We've talked about that. Okay, fine. Okay, let's just open it up to any questions about anything. You might have seen an email about selection tests. Any questions about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go on then.
Well, I'll just throw one question in. First of all, you've mentioned some specific percentages of body weight for certain exercises, but you've not mentioned anything for the deadlift. Yeah,
I mean, I'm deciding whether to set a rate or just leave it to people, or just set a bottom weight. I'm in discussion with Tom in Hong Kong about that. Haven't decided what it should be. What do you think it should be for Romanian deadlift? Bear in mind that people might be doing it with a kettlebell or a barbell, and we're talking about strength, endurance.
Needs to be.
I'm thrown with the weights because of the percentages that you set for the other exercises.
Yeah.
For the bent over row, you've gone for 50% of the body weight, but for a kettlebell swing, minimum of 16.
Yeah.
I just think 50% of the body weight on a bent over row is a lot for an endurance exercise.
Yeah. Right.
You're going to be chucking that kettlebell in the air. So I'm a bit unsure with the weights.
Right. In terms of kettlebell, let me explain that one first. So kettlebell, 100 kilo person would be swinging at least 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
16.
16. Yeah. 16%. So a 50 kilo person will be swinging at least 8. Now, obviously, you'd swing a large number. Yeah. However, we've got to end up with a grading system. So if you decide to sort of swing a 28 kilo kettlebell, then it's going to be, you're going to get more credit for that. Okay. So what I'm saying is it's at least, what I don't want is somebody, if you're going to do the test and use a 4 kilo kettlebell, it's not worth doing the test. So I want you to just come up with something that was a a sensible weight. I've got to say, I was in two minds about 40% or 50% for the bent over row, because I was thinking that more in terms of explosive strength and resilience.
I think the thing with the bent over row, especially for 90 seconds, it puts a lot of strain on the lower back. So I think that's something to bear in mind. I mean, I know we need the strong backs, but I think people might fatigue on that motion because of fatiguing in their lower back rather than fatiguing in, the area that it's assessing.
Okay. So would you say 40 rather than 50?
Yeah,
I would, because when we've been doing it in the gym, that is the place when we've been doing the bent over row, even though we've engaged core and all the rest of it, it really does get into your lower back if you're pushing the weight.
90 seconds.
But I would imagine.
Sorry, what about 30% body weight on a bent over row?
I think you would be able to experience the explosive power a bit more with 30%.
Yeah.
Have a go with the, with the reps and the speed more.
Okay. To be honest with you, the percentage I'm in discussion about, because whether it's either going to be a continuous row for 90 seconds or get somebody to, I'm not so keen on people training to exhaustion. I'm interested in people training to technical failure, taking stock, short rest and going again. So that's why I went for initially, I say we've got a little bit of time to discuss anyway. So rather than doing strength endurance, kettlebells is really strength endurance. This is more explosive. And then if you need to take a rest, and then go for another set. That'll say that, but that was probably the most popular exercise, which I wasn't surprised about, to be honest with you. So certainly whether it's going to end up being 50, 40 or 30, then we'll have a discussion to decide where we're going with that, whether it's going to be explosive, short rest, explosive, or it's going to be continuous strength endurance, in which case we go for the 30% option. Yeah. Okay, but that's.
I was thinking about that with the press ups as well, because it's a similar, is it full press ups for 90 seconds, so you just go steady. Do you blast it out for a minute, have a rest, carry on? Do you blast it out for a minute, go down to your knees?
Your choice.
But what do you, what's the gold standard?
Right. Well, what I would, I'm not saying it's the gold standard. What I would normally do is I'll do as many as I could, good quality, which is going to be 65, 70 seconds, 5-second rest, and then probably do sets of 5 for the end. So I want people, the point about it is I want people to think about what they're doing. What I don't want people to do is just blast it out and then end up with rubbish press ups. So they have to be, I want to just get people to the frame of mind thinking, well, this is what I need to do. I need to deliver the highest number of good quality press ups in 90 seconds. And I'll give you, for instance, a silly example very, very quickly. When I was doing that burpee thing the other day or the other week, then I started off by doing as many burpees as I could. And then suddenly realized, which I knew already, if I do sets of 12 or 10, and then add a 20 seconds rest, then I got this number. And eventually I got it up to doing sets of 16, 10-second rest. And I could go much longer just by planning it and doing it properly. So I'm not necessarily looking for somebody who's going to go and just blast it out. What I'm looking for is an intelligent approach to it. That's all. Yeah. So I'm not just looking at how much weight you can shift. I can think about how am I going to get the best out of this particular exercise. And that's I've never done this like this before. I've never had the opportunity to consult people. So I want to see if this works in terms of the way you approach it. That's all.
I think just a question as well. And there's understanding that you've consulted and people have gone back with their favourites and you've chosen the favourites, but you've got press ups, then you've got burpees with a press up, then you've got man make with a press ups. There's quite a lot with press ups all there.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that how that's laid out? I mean, I'm looking at it and thinking you might be better switching other exercises in terms of getting different muscle groups working. I don't know.
Example?
Well, there's no single arms in there. Everything's. I thought you might do some single arm things in there. Maybe people haven't put that as a favourite. Probably just because they've thought about it. Really, I don't know.
Okay, well, happy to discuss anything. So you would take out the good discussion point. Actually, you'd take out the man maker. I don't like that term, and put in a single arm row, maybe.
Or a goblet squat.
Or a goblet squat. Okay, yeah. Okay.
A heavy goblet squat.
At the end of the day, it's just these are comments. If these are what they are. We just get on and do it. That's the bottom line.
No, I'm interested in. Well, we've got some time. I'm interested in just because all this stuff is going to come out in a program anyway. I'm just interested in getting some feedback. If I end up swapping one in, swapping one out, I'm more than happy doing that because we do a lot of goblet squats anyway. And it's because it's just a great exercise, great for legs, great for back, great for everything. So, but yeah. Okay.
I've added the battle ropes if we don't have access to a gym, which, well, at the minute we do, but if that changes, I don't have any access to battle ropes at home.
Right. Okay. That is just a pure go for it exercise, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm anticipating that things will open up by the time we end up doing it, maybe in a couple of months' time. But if it turns out that one of those exercises, we don't have any exercise, then we'll just have to swap something else in. But like I say, what's important about all of this is in the past, whilst it's an important selection criteria anyway, the important thing is that you get measured over the coursework as well as the single selection day, rather than just, you see what I mean? So it's important, but it's not overriding. In the past, we've just selected people just on one day's paddling, for example, which is crazy because you end up losing people for a variety of reasons, yeah? Because they don't perform well on that particular day. So that's the point about having coursework, having the weekly returns, so you get a good look at the all-round athlete rather than just one day. Hopefully, have a good day and go from there. Yeah.
Tim, how are you going to ensure consistency? You know, kind of the integrity of the. You know, we talked with the stroke about the integrity of the stroke, and I feel quite strongly about. You know, if you're comparing one person, they need to be doing the same motion, and you've got a crew of 120. And I feel a little bit uncomfortable with like partner work when you're, you know, say I'm doing press ups and somebody's counting me, and we're both competing for the same seat on the boat. It doesn't feel that it's right to have that person kind of assessing you. It should perhaps be somebody independent rather than somebody who's, you know, on the team with you. You know, it could be the other way. They could be, you know, they could underscore you because they won that seat, or they could overscore you because they're your best buddy and they want to, you know, want to support you. It just doesn't seem like a fair assessment.
Well, ideally, we'd have somebody independent there, right? But and hopefully not to be there myself, to be honest with you. Whether that's going to be possible or not, I don't know. So there's two things to think about. Firstly is the integrity of the process, and there's a certain amount of trust involved in it. And the second thing is actually the time it takes to do it. Yeah, I mean, part of the considerations, if you have one on, one off for 90 minutes, I think the whole thing takes, with 60 minutes about the whole thing, you probably process, let's see, 60 minutes, 60 seconds about, you can process 28 people in an hour. With 90, then it's going to be an hour and a half, isn't it? Pretty much. So to process 28 people, it'll take an hour and a half. So it depends on whether you want to spend the whole day doing it. I mean, I'm like I say, I've done that in the past. I haven't had any issues with it in the past, frankly, because we go a lot on trust and confidence anyway. But if somebody objected to one person or other assessing them or scoring them, I mean, it's a fairly open process. Okay, well, I'm happy to hear any because it's a team thing, isn't it? I've not experienced any difficulties with that in the past, and like I say, because we have the coursework as well, then pretty much what happens, like most exams that you prepare for, then people tend to perform to their expected standard anyway. So the selection ends up being a confirmation of what you already know.
Sorry, as you say, if it's a part of a multitude of factors that are being considered, then the importance of the integrity, I guess, is, I mean, it's still important, but if it's, you know, the selection is being based on the performance under these tasks, then you need the conditions to be as, you know, as consistent across everything as possible. Otherwise you're comparing apples and oranges, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, there's an element of that, because you've got 3 different people doing, well, not different coaching, but there's different takes on it in different locations. So I think the best case scenario is we end up minimizing that to, well, just minimizing it as much as we can. If it's thought more appropriate to get independent assessors in, then we can do that. That's not, I mean, that's within the realms of possibilities. Of course it is. But
I'm guessing the way that you've done everything so far, Tim, if people were submitting results and you felt either way, there was a question mark over what they've put in, you actually start to quiz it. Or if you felt that they weren't performing to the level that you needed them to, it's not going to just be a straight cut off. You'd actually say to people, right, guys, we're not quite at the level. So you probably have an open discussion first.
And this happens all the time. The most frequent thing when you're talking about single boat is you ask people to paddle with the flow, and most people in the UK paddle on rivers. Yep. So there's with the flow and against the flow, and it's fairly obvious. Yeah, because I know most of the rivers they paddle on or paddled on them, and it's fairly obvious when people are only putting returns in with the flow, for example. So you sort of. There's a number of these sort of discussions going on, and you'll see that if somebody is submitting these, then suddenly for an assessment, suddenly it goes up or it goes down. So you can pick up trends, and there's a number of these conversations that go on between me and the local coaches on occasion. I've got to say, I know Nicky will tell you, I've had no such discussions in Dubai so far. And don't intend to, or don't wish to, if you know what I mean. But I have had these discussions at different locations, and that's just part of the coaching process. But we'll make it as fair and ethical as we can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to try and make it as efficient and less labour intensive as well. So yes, there are issues there, and the exact what I've put out last night is pretty much. Not so much a wish list. This is where I think we're going with it. If we end up swapping out battle ropes in with goblet squats, fine. There'll be 7 exercises, whatever, which are either all body, compound, or give us the best results we want. And if we turned out it's a fine tuning thing, we have to get an independent assessor in because people are more comfortable with that, then we'll do that. But that's a fairly easy thing to do. But I'm looking at, if people are generally happy with the structure, then that's fine. But you get the idea that we're going for 4 tests and you do 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get that idea. I wonder whether it should be mandatory that people have to do the erg and they have to do the gym. I know access is an issue, but in terms of your kind of most quantifiable measures of fitness, your erg, you can't cheat the erg, can you? If you're on the rower and you're taking a picture of the screen and you're sending in your weight and all the rest of it, then it's black and white, and it's a really, really good test of cardio. So you could end up, if you don't stipulate anything that's mandatory, you could end up with people doing the OC and the dragon boat and then one of the others and missing out on. I mean, the weight thing I think is really challenging. I think it's going to be really tough. And I think everybody should be doing it really, and then missing out on one of the water options. Personally,
it's not going to be 120 people. We're going to end up with, if typical years, we're probably going to end up with about 50 people. Yeah, if we end up with a full squad. Yeah, so the 120 won't remain 120 because I think there's in Dubai, I think there's 20. Just over 20 arriving this weekend on the first session. That will grow a little bit but we're not going to get 60 odd in Hong Kong, for example. So that will slim down a little bit. What was the other point? I've forgotten the other point. The only place realistically, because of access to single boats in Dubai and Hong Kong, there's more in Hong Kong than Dubai, then it's not going to be an issue in Dubai, because very few people got single boats and there's less people. But the problem is, if you're going to set single boats, that's the issue. Single boats as a selection criteria. If you're not familiar with single boats, you've got to learn to paddle it first. It's a bit like saying do a pull-up. If we teach you to do a pull-up first, it's So the only way that's going to be an issue is in the UK, frankly, where you've got access to all four. But at the moment, they're not even on the water. So that's one issue. Of course, the other thing is, if I've got no ergo returns from anybody at all, any stage in the campaign, then that's the questions I'll be asking. You see what I mean? So I'm going to end up, by the time we end up doing the selection, I'm going to end up with a representative sample from everybody about pretty much everything that I can. But like I say, it's not a perfect thing. It's just one of the faults, if you like, of having the system, having a multi-seated crew. In the past, I've travelled to different locations and I in the control measure. So if I'm doing 2:45 in an 01 on a canal in the UK and I'm doing 2:35 on the sea in Hong Kong, then that's what I'm comparing the pittle against, if you know what I mean. So that's how it's worked in the past. This might be different, and I'd anticipate me being the control measure as well again. But as I say, we'll have to sort of suck it and see to a certain extent, because I don't know how this year's going to pan out. And it's new and it's different and it's very chewy and it's difficult and it's going to be all sorts of problems. So I'll just have to not build it as I'm going along, but just put a framework in, knowing that framework may be bent and adjusted and altered as we go along for the reasons you've mentioned and others. Yeah. But that's all I can say at the moment. But like I say, I'm fixed on 4 tests. But exactly how they'll play out, then we'll have to have that further discussion to make sure it's as clear and ethical and similar in the 3 different main locations. So I'll ask you to trust me, but I'm not going to do anything without consultation anyway. Yeah, because it's your team, isn't it? At the end of the day.
What's the target date to do this?
Right. Well, that's the other point. I got asked the same question in Hong Kong this morning. Now you're back on the water, I want to give people the best lead in as possible and do it in sufficient time so we can blend as a team. So at the moment, I'm thinking in terms of late June, early July. But like I say, one bunch, UK isn't even on the water. So I'm going to try and set that, assuming the UK get back on the water after Easter. I think the target date is the 13th of April. Then I can try and make a stab at something, but I'd say provisionally that sort of time. So the whole point of publishing that is so people know what we're heading towards, so we can feed that into the weekly program and the program that Tom's writing, hopefully, and then go from there. But
I was hoping we could do both time trials this weekend, guys, at 5 a.m. on Friday morning. Come on.
I'll be there.
Brilliant.
Right. Let's park it there for the minute. I know it's not totally perfect and it won't be perfect, but I'm really interested in any comments you've got. But like I say, I did say I was going to be talking for 60 minutes and I've been talking for an hour and a quarter. So that's my other point as well.
Can I just say,
yes,
from what I've seen in the past, that if you are doing time on your rowing machine compared to when you're doing your time trials in the small boats, you can from that see there's not a big difference in, one will outweigh the other. You can see who's fit and who isn't. The times from each of them almost line up. Like when we do the 2K row and then we go out for 100-meter or whatever time trials out in the small boats, you can see those people that are doing well on the 2K row are doing well on the 100 meters or whatever it is on the small boats as well. they almost all line up. So you can, I don't think people would be able to BS anything, to be honest.
Let me round off with a trade secret, which is not really a trade secret. Time trials, selection really confirm what you already know. And
Yeah.
if you exercise due diligence and you work with your coaches, Nikki and Lee, and you work through the syllabus, if you like, and you get the returns from people, then what they're telling you week in, week out is what they're doing. And really, like I say, it's a final exam that you've prepared for and you just exhibit. There's very, very rarely that somebody pulls something out the bag. What the real value of that time trial day is, we tend to have a pre-trial and a main trial. And it's, if somebody's doing CrossFit and 5 sessions a week and stuff, they're going to be pretty much okay in the vast majority of instances. And if they listen to what Nikki's telling you, for example, what the trial really does, the pre-trial and the main trial, is if somebody's coming up a little bit short, it gives us the opportunity to say, right, Tim, you're a little bit short on this. You need to do this, this, and this to ensure you get in. So it's really, that's really what the benefit of that single day is. But as Nikki says, you tend to know who your strong contenders are. You tend to know who your more borderline contenders are. And as soon as you can identify those, you don't wait till the pre-trial, you get into them early. You see what I mean? That's the whole point of it. So it's a multi-layer of coaching, and there's other stuff going on in the backgrounds that we're not going to be publicising. But if somebody, say for example, I'll pick on Tom because he's just sitting down there. If Tom is working hard and he's come out for the power he's got, he's coming up short on a particular measure, we say, right, well, what's the issue here? And then we have a little bit of an intervention, if you like, with a one-to-one. So that's the way it happens. So by the time, very rarely do we end up with excluding people at the main time trial, because the idea is to sort of just confirm what we already know, crack on, BDA ratify, but the aim is to pick up the issues before we get there. That's the plan. It's not really a trade secret. It's obvious, isn't it? People say, well, what was the point of the time trial? Well, the point of the time trial was lead up to it. It wasn't just a single day. It was all the coursework as well. So that's really where we're going with it. So it's important and it should be taken seriously, but it's not the most important thing. It's just part and parcel of the whole process. Yeah? Okay. Right, I've talked too much again. Again, you make me talk too much. Very quick roundup. Chrissy, final points.
Nothing from me.
Great. Paul?
No, all good. Happy.
Brilliant. Heidi, mate?
I'm good.
Joe?
All good, thank you.
Abby?
Yep, all good, thanks.
Catherine?
All good.
Tom?
Happy to listen today, thank you.
It says Anna Hermione.
Yes, my daughter's iPad.
Oh, you changed your name.
Yeah, no, all good for me.
Brilliant. Okay. Debbie?
Yeah.
Jeremy? Hello, mate.
Yeah,
Okay.
all good.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Nikki.
All good with me.
Nikki says she's long suffering. No, she didn't. I just made that up. Right. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a lovely evening.
Bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Bye.